pilot in the Consolidated Aircraft B-24 Liberator heavy bomber. And flew 20 combat missions over Germany as the leader of a B-24 squadron. He rose to Brigadier General in a military career lasting 27 years. Preparing the P-51C for the 1948 Bendix Trophy race included removing bits and pieces to save weight, adding more streamlining to the airframe, installing an experimental propeller, and applying 48 coats of primer and cobalt blue paint. They named the airplane Thunderbird. DeBona entered the 1948 Bendix race in Thunderbird, but ran out of fuel 63 miles short of the finish line. In 1949, DeBona and Thunderbird finally took the trophy with a record-setting average speed of 470.14 miles per hour. It was the last year that the Bendix race included piston engine aircraft, and DeBona's speed record still stands today. Three months later, Stewart sold Thunderbird to Jacqueline Cochran for $1. Jackie Cochran was an accomplished record-setting pilot. She had won the Bendix Trophy in 1938, and she was the first woman to pilot a bomber across the Atlantic.
On the street, in the home, in a crowd or alone, shout wherever you may be.
But she was most celebrated as the founder and director during World War II of the Women Air Force Service Pilots, better known as the WASPs. Cochran recruited more than 1,000 women pilots, designed and oversaw their training, and managed their service during the war. WASP ferried military aircraft of all kinds from factories to training fields and embarkation points, and they served as flight instructors, all of which freed up men to fight the war. Over her long career, Cochran set many speed records in piston-driven aircraft and jets. She said of herself, "It never dawned on me not to do something because I was a woman." She would eventually set more speed records than any other pilot in history, man or woman. She set 3 of those speed records in Thunderbird before selling the Mustang back to Jimmy Stewart in 1953 for $1. Stewart repainted the airplane as Mr. Alex in honor of his father, Alexander Maitland Stewart. In March 1954, DeBona flew Mr. Alex from Los Angeles to New York City in just under 4.5 hours, setting a new transcontinental speed record of 561 miles per hour. 6 months later, Stewart sold the Mustang to James Cook, a Texas businessman. Cook used the airplane to seed clouds for rain. In August 1955, the Mustang was written off after a crash landing. Cook survived, and what was left of the airplane went into storage. Warren Pietsch grew up in a flying family. His father owned a flying service in Minot, North Dakota. Warren took over the business in 1990, repairing and restoring aircraft. As a 10-year-old boy, Warren had vowed that he would own and fly a Mustang someday. As a pilot, he flew Warbirds with the Texas Flying Legends and the Dakota Territory Air Museum, but he still wanted a Mustang of his own. In 1999, Warren bought a wrecked P-51 in Nebraska. When he discovered that the wreck he now owned was Thunderbird, he decided to restore the airplane to pay homage to Stewart and DeBona. As the work began, the Mustang was badly damaged and corroded from chemicals. The long process of restoration was finally completed in 2023, and the airplane will be housed at the Dakota Territory Air Museum and operated as a flying piece of history. And how is Queen Elizabeth part of Thunderbird's history? Well, that's another story.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ed McElhenney, and I'm going to be the rudder that steers the ship here today in this program. I apologize, first of all, for not having the aircraft behind us. Unfortunately, the weather here in Wisconsin did not cooperate, and with such a valuable aircraft as this, we decided to be somewhat conservative. You can see three gentlemen off to my left here, and what we're going to be talking about, those of you who are out on the ramp right now, you can see that sign that says History, Heritage, and Heroes. And we're going to touch on all three of those today. Quick introductions. The good news is that we'll have a little bit more time for discussion today because, we don't have the walk around. We're not going to be able to look at the aircraft, which I suspect we'll be able to sometime during the show if the weather cooperates, because it is an absolutely gorgeous aircraft. To my left, owner of the aircraft, Warren Pietsch. Okay. He's going to be doing most of the talking today. You saw him briefly in the slides there. Next to his left, we've got Chuck Cravens. He's our fact checker today. He's going to be the guy, if we start telling stories, he's going to wave the flag and he's going to go, no, wait a second, no, this is really how it is. So he's going to be our expert in that regard. And then the last guy's just a pilot. I'll harass Bernie a little bit, Bernie Vasquez. Probably one of the high-time Warbird pilots in the world, flown a little bit of everything, and I'd have to say, most hours, has anybody else flown the Thunderbird besides yourself at this point? Only guy who's flown a Thunderbird, so he's going to talk a little bit to us about the Thunderbird and its current performance characteristics. So with that, I'll get on. And Warren, I'm going to say first, thank you for being here, and thank you for what you've done with this aircraft. It is just spectacular as far as I'm concerned. It's got a history that's that long, and you know most of it. And I'll start with a quick question. Okay. Where did it come from? How did you acquire it? We know that you wanted to always fly a P-51 and own a P-51. Well, you've made it happen, okay? And how did this particular aircraft come into your being?
Well, it started in 1999, as the video said, in search of a P-51A, because Jerry Beck at Tri-State Aviation was developing P-51A program where he was going to build 10 airplanes, and I had hoped to build the second one, and Jerry and I were on our way to Cleveland with the Corsair and a TBM, and we stopped in Oshkosh and talked to Gene Chase. We had lunch with him, and when Jerry was telling him about this, and Gene said, well, he said, I think I know where there's some paperwork for a P-51A and some wreckage. And he described the accident up in Scottsbluff, Nebraska, and he used to work for James Cook, Gene did, and so I went hunting for that, eventually over the next couple of years, and found out that, in fact, his story was accurate and that there was an airplane up there. There was some paperwork, and I found out that it wasn't an A. But you know what? Halfway down the road, let's go ahead and keep pursuing this and keep going. So it turned out to be a P-51C. And then I learned that it was, and I've always liked Jimmy Stewart. I mean, this is about restoring one of your heroes' airplanes. And his military record, his Hollywood persona, everything about him was pretty cool.
Who didn't like Jimmy
Stewart?
Yeah,
exactly. But to be able to say that now I had his airplane that he owned was pretty cool. So the project really started in 1999. This particular project. I want to back up. a number of years. My dad, Alfred Pietsch, built the Starduster II in 1967. And when I was 10, we followed him down to Rockford to the EAA convention. He was flying that airplane, and the family was in a Mooney. And I was in the back seat, obviously, because I was 10. And I saw P-51s for the first time, and I don't remember how many there were, half a dozen of them. And one of them had stars and bars on it, and the rest of them were civilian airplanes. And Bob Hoover flew, and I went home and painted a picture of a P-51 on my bedroom wall with an opaque projector. I'm not an artist, but anyway, I painted this, and I started dreaming, and the dream, ebbed and flowed through the years, but it never did stop, and I was able to fly other people's airplanes, which was really, really an honor for me, and I'm very happy with the people that helped me get into the industry. Jerry Beck, Bob Odegaard, Dr. Hank Reichert, and there's a number of them that allowed me to fly their airplanes. So it kind of came and went, and then in 2017 I sold part of our FBO, and with the intent of retiring.
Good luck.
And that money,
How'd that work out?
Well, Thunderbird is now my retirement. So anyway, that's where that airplane came from. But the 10-year-old boy influenced by Experimental Aviation Association in Rockford, Illinois, before the convention moved to Oshkosh, and it just kept going and going and going. And so that's the story behind the project.
And when you found it, you said it was an airplane. Bits and pieces, parts.
Bits and pieces. It was, It had, as it said, it had crashed.
Yeah.
But it was there, and there was stuff that we could work with, and the airplane, as so many of them, I won't say obviously, but there's pieces internally in the airplane that are original North American pieces, but a lot of the structure has had to be reconstructed, which I think is true with just about any restoration that you see out there.
How long a restoration process? How long did it take?
Well, we bought another project, and were able to get the wing from that project and some other parts in 2019, and so the airplane was basically structure complete, and then we moved it to AirCorp in June of 20, and that's how long it's been in, I don't know what you'd say, completion or assembly or whatever, but that's where Mark Tisler and the whole AirCorp group excuse me, has been so beneficial for me, because they have the expertise and the talent to do the things that I certainly couldn't do.
And when was the first flight? When did you first fly this thing?
A month ago, wasn't it?
A month ago.
June 6th.
June 6th sounds right.
All right.
D-Day.
So it's not very long ago, and
No.
here we are.
Yep.
Well, thank you for that.
And the paint is extremely fresh. The painter, Roy Kiefer of Custom Aircraft Finishes out of Castleton, North Dakota, thank you, Roy, is here right now over in the Weeks hangar.
Mm-hmm.
He was detailing the airplane this morning for us, because the clear was put on a week ago today.
Okay.
So when it came here, Bernie and I brought it down Sunday. It came here, and it was still drying, gassing off, and everybody that walked around the airplane could smell it. And so I don't know that there's going to be an article, but if there is, I think they should title it, "Did you get a whiff of that blue Mustang?" Anyway.
And talking about the blue Mustang, I mean, it was highly, highly polished back when it was a racer, right? Same color, basically. It's close.
Yeah.
But I mean, that thing was just gleaming. And again, for speed, right? I mean, that was why
well,
they did it.
Supposedly, was it 48
coats
of lacquer paint increased the speed by 8 miles an hour.
Wow.
And again, like you talked about, he ran short of gas, just short of Cleveland in 48. So he was doing everything they could to get that airplane to not only win the race, but to extend its range and things like that. I think, so the finish that we put on it is not the same as they used then, because I'm interested in not repainting the airplane every year like they were doing.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, but it is a really, really pretty finish, and it replicates the sheen of the original airplane, I think, to a T.
Our shirts are close. Okay,
They're pretty close.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Very nice shirts too, by the way. All right. How about let's get into the history of the airplane a little bit. And you talked about Jimmy Stewart. We talked about Jackie Cochran. There's story after story after story, it seems. And that's what you want to represent here with this airplane.
It absolutely is. And thanks, Ed. And again, just to back up a little, thank you for Warbirds in Review for hosting us and having us here. It's an honor to be here representing this airplane, and frankly, it's an honor to have this airplane here to represent those three stories. And for it to debut in Vintage Aviation, I apologize to Warbirds, but it was a vintage
airplane.
It was a vintage racer, and I'm kind of a vintage guy at heart. But it was it never had a gun in it, so it never fought in the war and everything. And so the representation or the story that I'd like the airplane to be recognized for is not only how pretty it is and the records that it set, but the three people that flew it were representative of World War II veterans, great Americans, patriots, all. And it kind of, in my mind, starts out with Joe DeBona, who was a World War II ferry pilot, veteran, who had a dream of winning the Bendix race. He raced it in 47 in Magic Town, he raced in 48 in Thunderbird, and he raced in 49 in Thunderbird and won, and still holds the piston-powered record for the Bendix race. Common man achieves his dream. Jimmy Stewart, another war hero, commanded men. He was an actor before the war, enlisted, as the thing said. He was a commander of the Thunderbird squadron, B-24s. Came back to Hollywood and was a conservative. So Hollywood was conservative. Jacqueline Cochran holds more records today than any other aviator in the world. She was a patriot. She started the WASP. She did all these things. Women were equal. So the three things that I see the airplane representing for a great time in America after the war is the common man could achieve his dream, Hollywood was conservative, and women were equal. I think it's important to look at the airplane and understand what's involved in there. You know, in the Queen Elizabeth II coronation films, that was a pretty neat race too. So
that came from what on that coronation thing? It was from Canada. They were flying the canisters down, weren't they?
No, they were the Mustangs were. The Pony Express was coming from Goose Bay to Boston for the two different networks. CBS is what Mr. Alex flew in, the Thunderbird airplane.
Okay.
And then Paul Mance's airplane, who they obviously had some sort of a little contest going on between Mance and DeBona and Mance's pilots, because DeBona had lost to Mance in 47 and 48, and then Mance's airplanes lost to him in 49, so they reran that race and they lost again.
Chuck can kind of fill us in a little bit on that coronation thing.
Well, it was essentially kind of a publicity stunt in a way. It's television history, really, because there had never been an event televised in the United States that happened overseas on the same day. And of course, there's no satellites, and it was.
This is 1953. Okay.
It was possible to do it with a undersea cable, except it would take up the whole cable. So economically, that wasn't feasible. So the RAF flew what we would now call videotapes to Goose Bay and Canberra, and they also flew them on to Canada. The two Mustangs picked up their copies for their network and flew to Boston to try to be the first ones to put that on the air, the coronation, the same day. Mm-hmm. So, and it is the first time that happened. The other network realized that Thunderbird was going to win, so they punted and got coverage from Canada and actually got it on the air first. But Thunderbird won the race.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's talk about the airplane a little bit, and I'll go down to Bernie now for a minute. Points of note that from the onset. I mean, you did several engine runs probably on the thing, and did it start and run perfect the first time? Or were there little things that went wrong? What do you think about that side of it all?
It went very well. There's always teething problems in a project. You never, ever start anything and get it the first time. Mm-hmm. But I will say, this is the 4th airplane we picked up from AirCorp now.
Okay.
And they just keep getting better.
Good.
It was pretty effortless out of the gate. We did all the ground runs, got it all prepared. And, I mean, they do a good job of
all right.
I've done quite a few test flights this year in different airplanes and for different companies, and it's impressive.
Okay, and let's talk about the first flight. Went well, no big issues. It wasn't one of these, hey, airborne, I got a problem, come right back down and land.
No, I'll do exactly what I did on the first test flight. He was behind me, said brake release. I let go of the brakes, ran the power up to takeoff power, and it broke ground. Wanted to wait just a little bit to get the gear up in case there was a problem. Elected to put the gear up and started climbing, setting a deck angle for the speed I wanted to climb at, which was about 130. And it was so impressive I keyed the mic, because all of the AirCorp guys were on a radio listening to us. I just keyed the mic and went, yeehaw! Because I've never been in a Mustang ever that performs like this airplane. Okay, it's light. They've taken, just like that picture showed during the Bendix race, they took everything out that would have been, quote-unquote, a stock Mustang, which for AirCorp's guys, it was hard to build the airplane. Because Mark Tisser told me at one point, the guys would bring this restoration package over and say, okay, all this needs to go in the airplane. And he'd look through it and take one bolt and go down. The rest of that stuff's got to go back on the shelf. He said, well, no, it goes in the airplane. It's a racer. It's a racer. It was hard because they're so used to building everything totally authentic that it was just it was just a funny thing to watch happen. But the airplane stripped down. It's 6,700 pounds. An H model was like right there, I think. And the H model was the biggest performance, had all the performance back then. You know, it was an interceptor made to take off and go climb. This thing does that. And it's really, really, really
It's a
impressive.
stock motor, right? I mean, this is
completely stock.
Okay,
Glenn
so
Glenn
no
Wagman
changes
built
in
the motor.
So all the performance that you're getting is from a weight reduction and paint job, and so that's what's given it the speed. You were talking about coming up here, and you know, you again, it's unheard of basically. You know, you got how many? What you said, 40 knots more than typical Mustang?
Yeah, 30 to 40 knots more at the same altitude. We were at 11.5, 36 inches, 2,300 RPM. Normally you'd see 220 indicated. Mm-hmm. This thing's 270. And I mean, not doing anything. It's all in trim. I mean, at one point I took my hands off and went like this, and it's that fast.
Any additional limitations because they've lightened it up as much as they have? You know, say, you know.
I'm worried when I do the air show that when I do when I come over the top for the Cuban 8, that I'm going to be too high.
Okay, yeah, no big deal.
No, there's they race the high backs for a reason. We fast forward 50 years. You know, when I worked quite a bit on Voodoo as a younger person on the crew, did a lot of the work modifying it, put back on the race turtle deck, which tells you right there that they took the bubbles off in the 60s, 70s, and 80s and put these little turtle decks on to get the air to flow back faster. So a high back airplane's faster anyways. Razorback P-47, a Razorback Mustang, they're just faster, you know, but you can see why they did a D model, because you can't see out of these things. You know, you're every time you turn, your head hits something. Yeah. That's just one of the limitations.
Yeah. Wow. All right. Well, sounds like a great flying airplane. I'll say that right now. And again, I wish we had it out here, and I look forward to walking around it myself. But Warren, more stories about the history of this airplane. You know, the Jimmy Stewart, he sold it to Jackie Cochran for what, $1? I think is, you know, and then
won an OVC.
Yeah. And did Jackie want it to set records? Is
yep.
that was her goal?
Yeah, I think this was the third Mustang that she'd owned, right?
Think so.
Yeah, and raced. So yeah, and just to back up real quick to the first test flight, Ben Redmond and I were behind him, and I was allowing him to get airborne and the gear up completely before I took off, because I wanted him to have their own way, D model Mustang.
Okay.
And in my opinion, our fastest D model Mustang at the museum, which turned out to not be quite fast enough for this particular mission, I guess. But I don't know. But anyway, the funny part was we'd briefed it. Okay, I'm going to let you get the gear up before I go, because if there is a problem, I want you to have all the runway to use. I don't want to be competing with you.
Yeah.
And so I'm coming around the corner while he's adding power, and I see the wheels break ground, and he goes a little ways, and he said, pull the gear up. And I'm busy in the cockpit for a second, and Ben's saying, yeah, the gear's up and stuff, and he goes, yeehaw, and I'm looking out there about where a normal Mustang would be at this point, and I don't have him in sight. And Ben says, look at that thing go. And he does yeehaw, and I looked up like this and went, wow, it's really climbing. and then the chase began.
Wow.
Yeah, but anyway, so the history on the airplane, the video seemed to carry it pretty well. I don't know if
this was never your intent, though. When you bought a Mustang, you sat there and I just want a Mustang, and then all of a sudden you found that, hey, you've got Thunderbird.
It has met my expectations and exceeded them this whole project the whole time, and I'm so happy with the whole thing right now. I think these guys will tell you that at Texas Flying Legends, they had a nickname for me, EFD, Eternal Face of Disgust. But
out of everybody in this group right here, I've known them and worked with them the longest. I've never seen the mustache curl up. It's always a frown. So people keep asking me, well, he must just be totally excited. I said, have you ever seen his mustache go up? And it's been like that for 20 days now. Since the first flight.
I can't say that I see anything wrong with the airplane. I think the paint job is phenomenal, and the scheme, I mean, it's when you look at that up on the screen now.
Oh, yeah.
That's a retro paint job. That's 1949, and them guys absolutely nailed the scheme as far as proportions and beauty and stuff. As we painted the airplane, and I vacillated, these guys will tell you, I vacillated over that blue for years. And in the last 6 months, it was like every pickup, every car, everything I saw. That must be the blue. That must be the blue, you know.
6 months? Yeah. Every phone call, and we have phone calls. I live in California. He lives in North Dakota. 3 to 5 times a day. We're back and forth, and it got to the point where it would.
About the color?
Nope.
Oh.
That's just about business. Just friends calling each other.
Okay.
But every time the phone rang, I'd answer it, go, yellow and blue, yellow and blue, yellow and blue. And then Eric Hocuff randomly, as the paint job is happening, I mean, they're laying paint. Oh. Eric and his crew and the guys start looking at these black and white photos, and they go, the rudder's not blue. What do you mean the rudder's not blue? It's black. The checkered flag back then was yellow and black. Mm-hmm. They painted it, and it was a discussion internally. He called me, and I'm like, I think that's going to look horrible. But if it's the way it was, paint it. That was the biggest home run for this airplane.
Yeah.
If it was blue, it just wouldn't look finished.
And all artist renditions were blue.
Yep.
It was, as Bernie said, as it was painted, and they started questioning it. And I went back. I've been collecting photographs and stuff forever with lots of cooperation from Air Racing Historians Association. And there was the one color picture, and they blew up the rudder, and then you could see it. And you can go back and look at the black and whites, and some of them look like the dark checkers are blue. Mm-hmm. And I think what probably happened is they probably were blue and got painted black before the race. And that's a real common thing to have happen.
Mm-hmm. The other thing about that color or look is so many photos, black and white photos of the airplane were available, but we couldn't see the blue from that, obviously. Yeah. But we were trying to gauge what shade blue is. Is it light blue? Is it dark blue? Whatever it is, because some of them were gray and some of them, look at that one, up in there. It looks like it's dark blue, right? Yeah. Well, we found a color that changes with the light, and that's what this one does. And I stood out there on the line the other night as the sun was going down in the smoke, and I just kept watching it, and it just kept getting darker. Not the light, but I mean the color just kept getting darker and darker throughout the evening, and I was like, man, it really worked. And and then the stripe down the side, you see the stripe around the back windows, and then it goes up over the exhaust stacks to that emblem, the Thunderbird emblem. And we really worked on that in the paint shop. Yeah. Roy and Bruce, and we kept looking at it. And if you look at it, you'll see that in the original pictures, it had a little curve to it, and we replicated that curve here, and we've kind of figured out why they did it. There's some certain pieces in the airplane that lend themselves to going around to make that curve happen. And I finally was trying to describe it to them guys. I said, I don't know what it is, but it looks like the end of a signature, where you just kind of accelerate away from your name as you're doing something, But it's a neat look, and hats off to the guys that painted it into AirCorp for the stencils. But that little emblem that's up in the front of there, that Thunderbird, is all painted. It's all masked and painted, and it took a day and a half for Bruce to do that. He'd lay down a mask, paint a color, peel that off, lay down another one, peel out the next color. And the Pegasus Horse is the same way, So all the trim you see on that airplane is all painted.
Talk a little bit about the Pegasus Horse. I saw it on my shirt. I'm kind of going, and you said, oh, it's a. Go ahead, Chuck.
It's a trademark symbol for Mobil Oil.
Okay.
And sign collectors. That's a sign that's really sought after. They used to have big ones on gas stations, but it's a pretty identifiable logo, and they created some special gasoline, 150 octane, to increase the horsepower. I've read, and I don't know this for a fact, but I've read they were getting 3,000 horsepower out of it for the race.
Did they provided the gasoline for the race? Okay, and somebody had the story about they ran out of gas 53 miles short at the one time, and obviously we want to get as much gas in that thing as possible. And tell me the story about the dry ice.
Well, there's a picture, and I didn't provide it to these guys, but there's a picture of it at Rosamond Lake bed of an old gas truck. Obviously, it was new then, but and there's canisters that they're lowering into the top of the truck that are full of dry ice, and the airplane had a wet wing. And so they had covers out in the tips and at the leading edge of the wing, and they're putting that cold gas, which we all know shrinks, into the airplane, and then putting the covers on and puttying them shut so they could launch right away and climb into cold air and keep the gas from expanding. And it kind of gives you an idea how single-minded Joe DeBona must have been about, I ran out last time, I'm not doing it again.
It's extreme. I mean, this is you're taking it to the extreme here, and as much gas as you can get in there.
Yeah,
it's very interesting.
But it's cool. It's a cool idea.
Yeah,
I agree. They had the wherewithal to do it, and there weren't any regs keeping them from doing it. So, one of the other things, and did you have more
Keep
stuff?
Going. I got more questions.
So if they could go back to that picture that showed the anvil.
The anvil, yeah, I'd say.
It's like the most asked question with the least amount of answers, But I have a couple of theories on there. In the 1853 anvil that's below the left side rear window, when you look at the airplane, there was a 1853 anvil chorus. And one of the guys at AirCorp,
I did.
found this and said, it was written for an opera, and Glenn Miller did a swing tune of that 1853 opera, and Glenn Miller and Jimmy Stewart were friends. Glenn Miller died during the war. Yeah. Jimmy Stewart played him in a movie, the Glenn Miller story, after the war. So I think that might have been,
a tribute of sorts.
Yeah, acknowledgement, a tribute, and the lyrics in the opera, to me, kind of say what Jimmy Stewart was thinking, because when you read the book Mission, in there, Jimmy Stewart was PTSD. We didn't have that word, but he was traumatized by that war. Yeah. He kept his men's morale up. He was a great leader, but he was obviously really affected by the weight that he carried as a leader during that war. And he was tired of killing people and seeing his friends get killed. And he associated that, he associated with airplanes with that. And there's a paragraph in the book that says there was a day where he said, "I'm never going to fly again." He told somebody that. I think he came out of the war. He was a pilot before the war. He loved aviation. He started the Thunderbird airfield in Arizona, with some other actors and stuff. This airplane, I think, was something that made him happy. He could associate happiness with airplanes. And so the lyrics in that opera were basically gypsy maiden, it's time to quit mourning, it's time to celebrate, take off your dark clothes, put on bright colored clothes and stuff. So there was that. The second theory I have on the Anvil is his grandfather started their family hardware store in Indiana, Pennsylvania in 1853. And the Anvil in the mid-1800s was the emblem for a blacksmith shop. And I think a blacksmith shop and a hardware store were pretty much the same thing. So I don't know. There's a romantic version and there's a simple family recognition version there. But and now I don't have to tell that story to anybody anymore because it just kept happening over and over and over.
We were going to put a sign out by the airplane. The Anvil will be told every half hour on the hour because it seriously is. We're sitting around the airplane and, hey, excuse me, do you know what's the Anvil? To go talk to the guy in the yellow hat.
It seems like so many symbols on the airplane have dual meanings.
I really like that because that's the way I think. I look at something and I go, well, that's synonymous with this, but it
if
also
we were
going to
do it the way you think, we'd have like 40,000 emblems on it. Yeah, EFD.
How about the future? Where's it going? What's it going to do? You going to fly it some more?
It's going to go back to California. Okay. It's going to live in my hangar, and I'm trading him a North American Navy on, so he still has a North American.
Nice try, Bernie.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to work,
nice
but I want to.
But Navion's brightly painted. At least it's got that going for it. Yeah. It's going to live in the Dakota Territory Air Museum, and it'll get campaigned around the country, and people will get a chance to see it. Yeah, it's really nice right now, and I'd love to keep it that way, but I'm not gonna make it a hangar queen.
You're gonna fly it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
And so, that's what I see the future of the airplane, and I'll fly it for however many years. I'm not going to put a limit on it, and when that's over, I'll look for a new caretaker for the airplane to keep it going.
Go ahead, Bernie.
I'll be the caretaker.
You're volunteering. That's what you're saying. Yeah. And to go way back, this airframe never flew in combat. This was not a warplane per se.
It was being delivered from Dallas with 11 other airplanes. So there was 12 airplanes, I think, total. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but to be shipped to the Pacific Theater, China, Burma, India, whatever, and had a landing accident in Palm Springs and was abandoned there until after the war. And I'm thinking that Jimmy Stewart had some pull with the DOD and some different people, and so they ended up with this airplane, and its
original airworthiness was as a.
There's stories about it being exactly. It was built in 1948 and assigned a serial number. So
and it's not an air racer. It's not a serial number that has anything to do with the North American or Army Air Force serial numbers. It doesn't make sense for either of those.
That Palm Springs airplane is that number is in that serial number, and they dropped a couple numbers at the beginning of it, and that's what I think happened. And it would only make sense. Why would you build a Mustang when there was all of those airplanes available after the war? Yeah. Why wouldn't you take one?
They just went and picked one and said, we're going to strip it. Yeah. And what's funny is the airplanes have several different serial numbers, and so they're easily confused. Yeah. And that airplane, that's why the whole story about it going down a vintage is it really never was what we know as a Warbird. Sure. It never made it to the war. Yeah. It never left U.S. soil. Yep. It got built in its civilian world for one purpose. Mm-hmm. They wanted to go do the Bendix. Yeah. And then they did it, and it had its unfortunate accident. He finds the pieces, links it all together, builds it, I mean, he originally wanted an A, builds this thing back to what it was, and now we're here with it trying to display. And what's cool about this airplane is he brought it up before with the common man, the war hero, the records it set. And when you look at it now, we're repeating the history again. You know, the whole thing. It's
owner, pilot,
girl, and trophy. We can't forget the trophy there too.
This thing. This is a replica of the Bendix trophy that would have been given to the pilots that won.
You just put that in the dryer and it shrank.
Yeah. The actual traveling Bendix trophy was never given to a winner, and it's on display at the Wright-Patterson Museum, and it has the plaques on it of each year's winners on there. But this is a bronze replica of the trophy that Joe DeBona would have taken home with him.
How many years, Chuck? Okay, this is a question. How many years did they have the air races? Any idea?
Well, the Bendix was connected to the Cleveland air races,
right?
And I believe that began in the early 20s. The 49 race there was a tragic event, and it ended the Cleveland air races, and that was what the Bendix flew from L.A. to Cleveland. The Mustang Beguine, they lost control, crashed into a house, and killed 2 people, a mother and their child, and so that was kind of the end of the Cleveland air races. They did run the Bendix, but really from 49 on, it was kind of a military jet race. Like Warren said, there was no more. It wasn't run with piston engines again. So
this airplane won the last Bendix race.
The last piston-powered Bendix race, and that's why the record still stands. It also set a transcontinental record, and the speeds are a little unbelievable until people consider that those are across the ground speeds with hellacious tailwinds, because the transcontinental record is 560 miles an hour, and you're not going to fly that Mustang at 560 miles an hour at sea level in still air. So
now the Cleveland race I read the other day, they said that the tailwind averaged between 8 and 18 miles an hour. So it was mostly Mustang at altitude that was doing that. And if you look at the picture
think about that now, they're running the course at Reno with way more hopped up engines, asking way more out of it. I mean, these guys essentially had stock engines. They had 150 fuel from Mobil, which we get ours from, I can't even think of it right now, but we get high octane fuel for Reno. But it's 50 years later, and we're not going any faster. Granted, we're on a close course, a round course.
And down low. So the true airspeeds aren't there. They could be like when you look at some of the pictures of the airplane taxiing in at Cleveland, there's a black streak all the way to the rudder post, and the tongue's hanging out on that thing. So he never came off to stop in that race. It went to altitude and stayed there the whole time.
How old was he when he won the race? Any idea, Joe?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
He appears to be in his 40s in the pictures. And maybe late 30s, because he was in the military in the war.
He was probably only 25. The war might have aged him.
So it aged a lot of people.
All right, I have a question about the questions. Are we going to have an opportunity to do questions? We are. There are some folks out there that we can, and I'll open it up, and I think we're going to try to stay in here. I think that's the best, but if there are questions out there, I think we've got a microphone that can be passed around, and I see Bruce out there. I think that's Bruce. Okay, and we've got a question, so let's let the questions roll.
Where will the airplane be displayed for the rest of the event here at Oshkosh?
All right, hard to hear. Let's see.
Where will the airplane be displayed for the rest of the convention?
Where will it be displayed for the rest of the convention?
Warbirds, right down here at the end of the pavement.
Okay.
Down where they see that pylon that's set up behind the Barnstormers apparel stuff.
Okay.
So the airplane will be right in front of that.
Okay, so it'll be there when the weather cooperates. We'll leave it at that. Anybody else? Any other questions out there?
Gentlemen, thanks for a great presentation. Did Jimmy Stewart actually fly Thunderbird?
Not that we're aware of.
Well, actually, that's not true.
Really?
I have that Western Guns article that the kid's dad was an actor, Western actor with Jimmy Stewart, and he talks about his dad had an air coupe and took him out to the airport one day to have a meeting with Jimmy Stewart, and Jimmy Stewart taxied in a blue Mustang.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay,
There we
I haven't
go.
seen that article. I've been looking.
All right, one up on Warren.
He's the fact checker now.
All right. I didn't know that one, for sure.
The airplane appears to have a D model wing on it. Can you tell me why?
A D model wing.
Yep, I can. When the airplane originally had a problem with James Cook, it was because the gear was trapped. And C models, and Bernie, correct me if I'm wrong, but C model wings were inferior to D model wings in the fact that they only had one uplock on the clam doors, and I think it was at the back of the clam doors, and they had a little bit of history about at speed, the doors coming open and the gear coming out and a wing coming off the airplane or something like that?
In the early stages of P-51 existence, they originally didn't have uplocks on the clam doors, and they had a couple instances where the gear didn't make the actual uplock, and under G, the gear came out. So then they modified them, and they put uplocks on the clam doors to fix that, but sometimes those were problematic on the early airplanes, and so this particular airplane ended up with one main gear out, the tail wheel out, one main gear hung. The guy must have been a little inexperienced or probably just didn't care because there was 1,000 of them out there. So he elected to climb to altitude and jump out. Any of us would have put the gear up and bellied it in and would have done a lot less damage.
And I knew that Bernie was going to be flying at an air show, so I wanted the best possible wing, strongest wing we could put on it. So,
so to answer the question and make a long story really short, it's got a D wing because the landing gear system is better, in our opinion. There's going to be 1,000 people that argue it.
Well, and
there's 1,000 different ways to skin something. This is just what he chose to do.
North American chose to improve the gear system, and I would rather do that way. And they actually built a C model with a D wing on it, and they tested that airplane. And in the process of putting the bubble on top of the airplane, I'm sure they elected, well, let's just keep the BC production line going, and we're going to transfer over here to that and live with what we've got. But that's the reason for the D wing. And actually, I haven't flown it, but I kind of think the D wing with the combination of the C fuselage is maybe a little faster than a C, and it's a little better approach speeds. It's because of the extra canted leading edge on it and stuff. Why
do you put a brand new aluminum big block in your Chevy?
Yeah,
because it's better.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So anyway, that's the answer for the D-wing.
And you know, we kind of got a local expert here about landing Mustangs with only let's see, a tail wheel and one. Yeah, I think Connie, didn't you have that problem? What?
Yeah, but Warren wants to learn.
Can check YouTube and you may
yeah, but we want to know now.
I'm not part of this program, but there was an uplock issue with the clamshell door, and I had one gear jammed up, and the other one came down, and then I could not retract the one that was down because of the dog ear, the down lock safety issue for the ground. So anyway, I had to land the airplane with one gear up, one down, and that's been a long time ago. And the airplane is
right here, by the way.
flying right now.
Yeah, that's the good news.
But anyway,
Yeah.
bring that up.
Okay, just wanted to let you know. Yeah. All right. Any other questions out there? No. Looks like we're good. All right. I'll ask the panel here. Anything more you want to bring up about?
You know, when the airplane gets over here, I'll be standing next to it. And
Okay.
happy to field some questions and really hope people come and enjoy the look of the airplane.
Okay. And Bernie's going to be flying it some more here.
Possibly, yes.
Okay.
There's some scheduling things that may happen or may not happen.
Okay.
It is scheduled right now for Thursday and Saturday, it may get changed to a P-47.
Okay.
So we're just kind of we're
flexibility, key to air power. Yep. Okay.
Yep.
And for me, it was really an interesting airplane to research, because all the restorations that I've done or researched for AirCorp and Dakota Territory have been military, and this one was completely different. The sources, picture permissions, everything was way different than doing a military airplane. But it was just fascinating how connected that was to history from the late 40s to all the way up to when it was lost, the coronation and all of that.
Yeah. Anything, Warren? I think you covered a lot here. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful airplane. It's got quite the history. As we started out, history, heritage, heroes. We've talked about all those, and this airplane represents all that.
Yeah.
And I thank you for what you've done with the airplane. I look forward to the campaigning of it in the future. I think the more people that see it and understand the story, I think the more people will appreciate it.
And I have one request for the people that come see him. Reno.
Yeah,
it's the last Reno.
Yeah. I would agree. I think that would be terribly appropriate, if that thing was out there. I think that, yep. All right. In that case, I'll say thank you very much, folks out in the stands here, for being here and putting up with the inclement weather. At least it didn't rain, I don't think, out there. And you gentlemen, I'll say now, thank you.
Thank you.
Again, I appreciate the knowledge.
Thank you.
Safe flying out there, Bernie, with this thing. And, we look forward. We got another Dakota airplane this afternoon, for what I understand. We've got
P-47.
We got Bonnie, a P-47, and that starts at 1 o'clock today.
And that's where the real originality battle comes, is them guys were restoring that alongside this. And they were super original on the P-47.
I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall.
Yeah,
when the guys would hand Tissler something. He go, no, I don't want that. Doesn't go in here.
Yeah, but they want it. Anyway, thank you.
Are you going to be here for this afternoon too, Bernie, for the P-47?
Yes.
Okay,
I will
good. All right, so you'll see him again. All right, thank you, folks. We appreciate it, and we'll see you this afternoon.
How to grow delicious tomatoes. Step 1. Feed them while watering with Miracle Grow Liquid Feed. That's it. Miracle Grow. All you need to know to grow. How to grow more vibrant flowers. Step 1. Feed them with Miracle Grow Shake and Feed. That's it. Miracle Grow. All you need to know to grow. How to grow delicious herbs. Step 1. Use Miracle Grow potting mix. That's it. Miracle Grow. All you need to know to grow.
Today, we are pleased to announce that Warbirds in Review has received a generous donation of a beautiful Breitling Super Avi B04 chronograph GMT 46 tribute to the Vought F4U Corsair watch. Retracing the celebrated design codes of the Breitling Reference 765 Avi Copilot, the Breitling Classic Avi collection recalls Breitling's earliest ties with aviation from the 1930s onward, when the brand was known for precision cockpit clocks and pilot chronographs produced by its Hewitt Aviation Department. The classic Avi pays homage to this unique heritage with a highly legible dial, rugged case, and signature rotating bezel that allowed pilots to measure some of the very first long-haul flights. Today, the collection celebrates the pioneering spirit of those early aviators along with 4 legendary airplanes: the Curtiss P-40 Warhawk, the de Havilland Mosquito, the Vought F-4U Corsair, and the North American P-51 Mustang. This amazing contribution will help Warbirds in Review continue to bring audiences our unique aviation programs that showcase history, heroes, and heritage together every summer. Every aircraft has a history and every pilot has a story. Why does it matter what happened long ago? The answer is that history is inescapable. It connects things through time and encourages us to take a look at those connections. History is the story of who we are, where we came from, and can potentially reveal where we are headed. The team at Warbirds in Review will be offering a very special opportunity to take home this rare timepiece with your tax-deductible contribution through a raffle or auction. Stay tuned.
You know what this is? Scott's no quibble, money back guarantee. If for some reason you're not satisfied, you'll get your money back, no quibbles, guaranteed. I mean, why you wouldn't be satisfied with some of the best lawn care products on the market? I don't know. Let's say, hypothetically speaking, your bar for satisfaction is so high, it's almost unreachable. I'll track you down to understand what it takes to make you happy. Hypothetically speaking, of course. Feed your lawn. Feed it.
I guess I was fairly apprehensive the whole time that I was flying in combat. And I guess there's good reason to feel that way. I'm there to cause a lot of damage and a lot of harm, and therefore they would like to damage me. And I was 25 years old at that time. Top Gun was really a thrill. I must have done well in actual combat because at the time I was just a lieutenant junior grade, which is a first lieutenant in the Air Force. And so I may have been the very first lieutenant junior grade to go through Top Gun. That was the dream of a lifetime come true. I had wanted to be an aeronautical engineer and a test pilot just like my dad from the time I was 10 years old. STS-27 was my third launch. And it was only the second launch after the Challenger accident. Well, I will never forget, we maneuvered the arm, and Mike Mullane was my arm operator, so he moved the arm over there, and we brought up the television image of the right wing, and I looked at what I was seeing, and I said to myself, we are gonna die. To be an airline pilot, there was mandatory age 60 retirement. I was a NASA astronaut until I was 50 years old. And so I looked at the situation, and I had known a number of Southwest airline pilots, and they were just like me. They were flying because they loved to fly. Well, there's a lot of piloting that goes into it, a tremendous amount of piloting that goes into it, because you're going to wind up passing other airplanes. You're going to get in a duel with another airplane that's fairly closely matched. So there's a ton of satisfaction from doing that. And hey, let's just talk about the racing itself. It's fun to fly low, but it's dangerous.
climbs off all by itself. It does it itself. Okay?
Yeah, you're right there with me though.
Every time I open the hangar door to go flying, I realize that I'm one of the lucky guys doing something that I dreamt of as a kid.
North American Trainer Association, or NATA, is known for bringing warbirds together in a stunning showcase that celebrates human ingenuity and opens the world of military aircraft to future generations. It's the future generations that hold the power of these great birds in their hands, much like NATA member Garrett Fleischman.
You're not just flying in the moment. You're flying with a whole bunch of history on your shoulders, and it really means a lot to fly them.
Bridging history and the future, NATA supports those who remember when and future generations through clinics, scholarships, social media, and a world-class magazine. NATA is a resource for the entire warbird community, and it's open to anyone. Membership can get you access to history in a way you've never experienced before, on the ground and in the air. Without NATA's help through scholarships and regional clinics, the best and the brightest of aviation's future wouldn't have the opportunities they need to soar.
I myself do not own a T6, I do not have the resources to fly in big formation flights on my own, but joining an organization like NATA allows me to do this just because I'm motivated and eager to learn.
The scholarships for future Warbird A&P mechanics is a start, but it's the clinics that keep everyone up to date and provide the necessary training and type club support. And to keep the momentum going, there will be even more regional clinics and events in the future. These regional clinics offer an opportunity like no other to learn about flying warbirds in formation and to become a better pilot.
We all share the same interest of being a better pilot, being a safer pilot, and being a better formation pilot.
Join this organization, and it's a constant learning process, and that's another thing that I love about it, because a good pilot is always learning, always.
NATA membership isn't just for pilots, it's for everyone who loves aviation, past, present, and future.
We have a lot of members that are not they're not even pilots. They love the fact that the airplanes still fly, and they share the enthusiasm and the pride that's going on.
It's a place where history comes to life, where the future is sparked by imagination, and where aviation is more than just wings in the air.
That's what it's all about at the end of the day. What else is it for?
I was asked, where do I see NATA going into the future? And I see nowhere but up.
Be a part of it. Join NATA today.
STS-27 was my third launch, and it was only the second launch after the Challenger accident. Well, I will never forget, we maneuvered the arm, and Mike Mullane was my arm operator, so he moved the arm over there, and we brought up the television image of the right wing, and I looked at what I was seeing, and I said to myself, we are gonna die.
How to grow more vibrant flowers. Step 1. Feed them with Miracle Grow Shake and Feed. That's it. Miracle Grow. All you need to know to grow. How to grow delicious herbs. Step 1. Use Miracle Grow potting mix. That's it. Miracle Grow. All you need to know to grow.
About a year ago, I met a gentleman called Walt Fricke, and they had a program called Veterans Airlift Command. And what the purpose of Veterans Airlift Command is predominantly hauling post 9/11 vets with severe bodily injury, post-traumatic stress issues, things like that.
I was a helicopter pilot and was flying gunships when I got wounded. We were leading a gun team, and they were making a combat assault. The slicks are inbound with the troops, and when he fired the rockets, one of the rockets exploded coming out of the tube, and the shrapnel from the rocket took my foot, severed my foot, except for the Achilles tendon. My foot flipped up, and I grabbed my knee, and my foot flipped up and landed backwards in my lap. And then my crew chief, who had also taken shrapnel in the chest, unpinned the seat, laid it down, pulled off his belt, and put a tourniquet on my leg, like a count of 1, 2, 3. And he saved my leg. I spent 6 months in the hospital when I got back from Vietnam, a long way from home. And it was a while before my family could gather the resources to come and see me. And during that period of time, I was very anxious. I was losing weight, maybe PTSD and concern about how they'd view me with a busted up body, had a leg that we thought I was going to lose, and so that 6 weeks stayed with me. When I retired, I had an airplane, and I thought, I can solve that problem for somebody. And I thought, well, I'll start this transportation service for combat wounded with my airplane. And a friend of mine challenged me and said, you can't keep this idea to yourself. It's, you need to create a national network and do this, and with your connections and that sort of thing, you could probably succeed, in which we have. We have 2,500 volunteers that fly for us, and very few people fly only one mission. Once they do it, they sign up to do more. There are lifetime friendships created out of the flights. It changes their lives.
I've never met a finer group of people. there's not a one of them that has this feeling sorry for themselves, or they don't have a chip on their shoulder about their condition in life, and everyone we've flown has just been exemplary, nice young men. My favorite story of transporting a vet, I reached into the baggage compartment and I grabbed his backpack when we got him back home, and his Purple Heart was attached to it, and it was the first time I'd seen it during the whole trip. And I handed it to him, almost with tears in my eyes, and the young man set the backpack down and gave me a hug and said, "Mr. Holt, I never in a million years would have believed I would have flown in a private jet, much less be able to sit in the front right seat on both legs." And he was so appreciative. It humbled me because he's thanking me for thanking him.
We're high on compassion and low on red tape was my beginning mantra, that we're going to build this so that it's easy for them to access, easy for our pilots to access. So we want a very simple, low overhead, clean, effective operation. I traveled to Walter Reed, Brooke Army Medical Center, the major touch home points hospitals, and walked the halls and met the families and the guys in their beds and said, when you get ready to go home, you call us, because you don't need to go through fly commercial and go through the TSA and with a wheelchair or prosthetics or a traumatic brain injury or burn victim. They don't need to be hassled by the security if we've got somebody that's willing to fly them, which we do.
World War II changed the world forever, and forever after. The Fagan Fighters World War II Museum of Granite Falls, Minnesota was created as a tribute to the men and women of the greatest generation, whose incredible sacrifices during World War II won and preserved the freedoms we enjoy today. The Fagan Fighters World War II Museum is the dream, the creation, and the passion of the Fagan family of Granite Falls, Minnesota, Ron and Diane Fagan and their sons Aaron and Evan.
We've taken on a mission to connect the latest generation with the greatest generation, because these are events in our history that need to be remembered, and in our case, and in the case of young children, they need to be introduced to. And we feel they're very important and need to be preserved, and that's what we're trying to do.
The mission is to preserve the memory of the heroes of World War II, promote patriotism in today's Americans, and inspire tomorrow's leaders to study and apply history's lessons. It's not enough that these beautiful airplanes are collected and restored. The Fagan Museum restores each of them to flying condition.
I think with everything at the museum, having stuff operational is important because people get to see them, how they were used, and get to hear them start up, and it gives people a better perspective of what these machines were capable of and what they look like in the air.
There are no markers, monuments, or visitor centers in the skies above Europe, the Pacific, or the China, Burma, India theaters of World War II. These airplanes are the monuments. They are timeless portals to the courage and deeds of those who gave their all to preserve all that we hold dear. When the museum's airplanes are not flying, they are displayed in 3 hangars: the trainer hangar, the fighter hangar, and the bomber hangar.
World War II was a worldwide conflict, and unfortunately it's not being taught in our schools anymore. But history always has a tendency to repeat itself, so we got to educate the younger generations about World War II. So learn these experiences from the past so you can apply them in the future to help guide this country in the right direction.
I know the buildings are built to last 250 years. The stories that are contained within these buildings will last just as long. We're connecting some of the battles. The only thing we can connect them with are the ground machines, which many people have a connection to rather than the aircraft.
With the museum opening, I started looking into the military vehicles. Started with the Deuce and a Half. The ambulance, when I had that repainted, we made sure that it matched the 4th Medical Battalion. And the 4th Medical Battalion actually were the first ambulances to arrive on D-Day. The ground vehicles all operate fully functional, and we could start them all up and take off and drive them right now.
The Fagan Fighters World War II Museum doesn't just tell the story of what happened. It is dedicated to preserving the stories of those who lived it, telling us how it happened. Veterans and others are invited to the museum to share their stories firsthand. Their stories are recorded and preserved through the museum's Voices of Valor program.
Let's do our museum around my father, Ray Fagan, and his World War II experiences. The first campaign medal he got was Normandy invasion. Second campaign medal he got was Liberation of Paris. And the third campaign medal he got was the Battle of the Bulge. He says you can't imagine how terrible it was.
We decided to make our collection a real museum when people referred to it as such. We opened the museum doors directly after our air show in 2012, so the date was June 17th, 2012.
The Fagan Fighters World War II Museum puts its collection in context for visitors by using original murals, sculptures, paintings, photographic collections, and other fine art to tell the story of epic events such as D-Day, June 6, 1944. Someday, sooner than we'd like, the headline will read, "Last World War II Veteran Dies." When that day comes, how will we connect the greatest generation with the latest generation. Restoring these things to their original power and function, and capturing the stories of those members of the greatest generation who are still with us, offers not only a portal to the past, but an immortal connection to America's future generations.
You know what this is? Scott's no quibble, money back guarantee. If for some reason you're not satisfied, you'll get your money back, no quibbles, guaranteed. I mean, why you wouldn't be satisfied with some of the best lawn care products on the market? I don't know. Let's say, hypothetically speaking, your bar for satisfaction is so high, it's almost unreachable. I'll track you down to understand what it takes to make you happy. Hypothetically speaking, of course. Feed it, lawn. Feed it.
One of my earliest memories was flying a J3 Cub with my dad, and he was letting me fly the whole flight. I was 5 years old, and my dad said, "Okay, let me fly it now." And so I got off the stick momentarily, and then I was bummed because I still wanted to fly it some more. So I was determined, I'm going to fly it some more. So in the flare, I get back on the control stick, and I got my butt thoroughly chewed. When somebody else is flying, you don't ever touch those controls. And so that's why it's been such a vivid memory. It is just a real pleasure and an honor to have you on board today. And I'm sure a lot of people know all about your music career. I'll bet they don't really know about the other side of you, the other side of your career, the other side of your life, the aviation side of it. You have been involved in aviation for a great many years. You and your family, I believe, right?
Yeah, you know, my dad and his two twin brothers kind of kicked it off. They were in Alaska when it was still a territory, flying the bush. After that, for I guess 5 or 6 years, Dad got the jet call and went down to Bainbridge, Georgia, and started instructing Air Force cadets, and in T-28s, T-37s, and T-6s, and then along came old Aaron, and you know, from the first time I put my hands on the controls of a DC-3 at 4 years old. My dad was a captain on DC-3. And as soon as I did that, I knew for the rest of my life what I wanted to do for a living. When I looked out the window and the cars were the size of matchbox cars going underneath me, I was stunned and taken completely. And, you know, as I've said before, is when Dad said airport, I grabbed a hold of his breeches leg and I would not let go. This music thing just came out of nowhere. The energy crunch of the late 70s is kind of what kicked me out of the aviation business, because like you, I wanted to be an astronaut to start with, but looked like that wasn't going to work out. And so I wanted to go to the airlines with the career I had. But that big energy crunch it was a major furlough back in those days, and I just saw I wasn't going to make it. So I turned to music. My daddy didn't like trouble if it came along. Everyone knew him, we'd fight and he'd be home. He never was a hero, down in shining light. It's a good old fight standing, he don't right. He'd say you've got to stand for something or you'll fall for anything. You've got to be your own.
Like the pine trees lining the winding road, I've got a name, I've got a name. Like the singing bird and the croaking toad, I've got a name, I've got a name. I can make you mine, taste your lips of wine, anytime, night or day. Only trouble is, gee whiz, I'm dreaming my life away. I love you so, and that is why I need you so. I could die whenever I want you. All I have to do is dream, 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 dream. We didn't even rehearse that.
Call sign down, call sign.